everyone, today I'm going to be replacing this 12 volt DC USB charging port in my travel trailer. And unfortunately, it's a fairly common issue with these failing. And I'm not sure what causes them to fail or what caused ours to fail. All I know is that one day I plugged my phone in to charge it and it just didn't work. Which stinks because my wife and I boondock and dry camp very often, and we power our trailer off of solar. So if all we want to do electricity-wise is charge our phones, then since this doesn't work, we have to turn our inverter on and plug our phones into a typical 120 volt AC outlet, which is an incredibly inefficient way to charge a phone because our inverter alone pulls about 4 amps from our batteries, which is nowhere near what our phones, charging 2 phones uses. So it's just a very wasteful way to charge our phones. Now, the part I found to replace our USB charging port is a direct replacement. So I got pretty lucky finding this. I found it on Amazon, and I'll be dropping a link in the description below for this part as well as the various tools I used for this fix. But enough of that, let's get to it. The tools you'll need to do this job is a multimeter, a screwdriver, wire cutters and wire strippers, a crimp tool, electrical tape, and the replacement port, and spade connectors, which were included with my replacement port. But before you start this project yourself, you're going to want to watch this video all the way through because I hit a minor snag that I need a Stanley knife to get me out of, and then I hit a big snag that required a soldering iron. So watch this video the whole way through so that you can avoid making the same mistakes I did, which means you're going to need these tools too. The first step is to unscrew the bezel from your charging port so you can actually access it. And what we're going to do before we start just cutting wires and replacing it is I'm going to show you how to actually test your USB port to make sure that it's the port itself that has failed and not something further upstream. There may be a break in your wires or an issue upstream from your charging port that has actually caused it to fail. So you want to remove any factory electrical tape that is around the wires leading into your DC charging port. And with your multimeter set to DC voltage, go ahead and stab the red prong into the red wire and the black prong into the black wire so you can get an accurate voltage reading. You should see a reading between 12 and 14 volts. And if you do, then you know that your plug is receiving the proper amount of electricity from the batteries, and the plug is faulty. Now that we have verified that the plug is the problem and needs to be replaced, you'll want to disconnect your RV or trailer from all power sources, including the battery and utility power. And then we'll want to recheck the plug with a multimeter to make sure that it is showing 0 volts, ensuring that the wires are de-energized. Now that we've ensured that the wires leading to the plug are de-energized, we can go ahead and cut them with a wire cutting tool. Now we can remove the factory plug from the factory bezel, which we will be reusing. This is trash, this is still good. The next step is to strip both black and red wires back far enough that we can crimp our spade connectors on. And then crimp the spade connectors onto both black and red wires. Be sure to give each crimp a pull test to make sure that you got a good crimp. And it's always a good idea to wrap your crimped connections in plenty of electrical tape. Now if your bezel is like mine, you've got these 2 flat parts at the top and the bottom that don't allow the new plug to fit in. So these will need to be trimmed away using a Stanley knife. Just trim them just a little bit so that they're sort of circular because this new plug is very close to fitting in. So it just needs a little bit of trimming on both sides. I didn't shave too much away because I wanted a nice tight fit. With the new port seated in the factory bezel, we can go ahead and then screw on the included retaining ring that just makes sure that the plug stays seated in the bezel. On the back of the plug, you should see two prongs, one marked with a plus sign and the other marked with a negative sign. The red wire, or the hot wire, goes to the positive prong, and the black wire, or the ground wire, goes to the negative prong. And once that's done, go ahead and just push the bezel up against the wall, and then... Wait, what? It won't fit. My wall's too thin. This whole assembly is too thick, or too long. Oh, come on. Easy projects are never easy, right? The main reason this whole assembly is too long to fit into my RV's wall is because of these spade connectors. They come all the way back to here. So if these weren't there, it would just be these small prongs, and this whole assembly would fit. So instead of using nice, easy spade connectors, we're gonna have to solder these wires onto these prongs. So I have to remove the electrical tape from my spade connector. And then I have to trim my wire off, which is a shame because I really don't have very much wire to work with here anyway. Keystone did not really give much more wire. This is it. And I have to do the same to the other side. Restrip both wires. I reconnected the power to my RV so that this soldering iron could be powered. However, I was able to locate the 12-volt fuse that powers, or that allows power to be sent to these two wires, and I pulled that fuse. So I can now power my soldering iron in the RV while also having these wires de-energized for safety. Once those soldered connections have cooled down, we'll go ahead and wrap both prongs with plenty of electrical tape. And now we can go ahead and push this in. And this time, it fits. And then all that's left is to screw the bezel back into the wall. And then the very last step is to replace the 12-volt fuse that I pulled to de-energize those two wires leading to that plug. Doesn't it just figure that every single project that you think is going to be straightforward and easy always has some issue, and you've got to redo this, redo that, make modifications to this and that, and you know, it's just never as easy as you think it is, right? But whatever, we got it in, and I'm pretty sure it's working, so the last thing to do is to test it. There we go, it's charging. And the great thing about this plug is it supplies 5 volts and 2.1 amps, which means it qualifies as a fast charger. And both USB ports receive 2.1 amps individually, so you can charge 2 phones at the speed of a fast charger. But that's all for this fix, and despite the fact that I ran into some snags, it was still relatively quick and easy. We'll see you next time. Bye.